Good afternoon, Britain. Now, number 10 says it expects the deportation to happen imminently in the next few days. That doesn't feel so imminent. Sources say that he'll be returned to his country of origin. And Downing Street says that one person has been suspended whilst the investigation into the accidental release of Hadush Kebatu takes place.
Well, let's get the lowdown now with our political editor, Christopher Hope, who's just left a briefing with the Prime Minister's spokesperson in number 10 Downing Street. Chris, the government suggesting that this deportation will happen within days. Do we have anything more specific than that?
That's all we have in the next few days, Tom and Nana, and imminently. We understand from sources he will be returned to his country of origin, which is Ethiopia. That cannot happen soon enough. We think the idea had been last Friday morning when he's released at 10:25 a.m. from Chelmsford prison to go almost directly or over the weekend to this flight to Ethiopia. That never happened, of course, because this individual was told to go onto a train and go somewhere, and he did try, of course, to go back into prison a few times. It's a complete cock-up. We'll be hearing later from David Lammy, who is now the Justice Secretary. He is speaking to MPs. We expect around 4 or 5 o'clock. He'll then talk to the Parliamentary Labour Party as a deputy leader, alongside the new elected deputy leader of the party, of course, Lucy Powell. So this government, with its own MPs, is trying to restore its authority in how it's running things after, frankly, a week of chaos when it's felt that the country's barely being governed by this apparently passenger government.
There'll be an inquiry into this, because David Lammy said that he was livid about this, and one person is apparently being suspended. Do we know more about who was suspended or what level that person was at?
No, we don't. We may hear more when we hear David Lammy address MPs later. We're told this by number 10. We need to know what happened here. This is symptomatic of a system under too much strain. We have a prison crisis, the government says, that demands early releases. Of course, they're blaming the early releases last September on the full to breaking point prison system they inherited from the Tory government. It's a system, they say, working under extreme pressure. There'll be no overnight fix. They admit that 262 people were released in error in the year to March. A lot of that, the majority of that time, of course, under Labour government. But they do say that there were 800 mistaken releases under the last government, but they won't give a timescale for that. It's a prison system which is struggling, they say. We'll hear more later. We are expecting David Lammy to announce who will carry out this investigation, but frankly, it can't come soon enough. I think the faith in this government to keep us safe was severely damaged by that release on last Friday morning. Of course, it was sort of dealt with at around 8:30 yesterday morning. But how this happened and why it must never happen again is front and foremost of the government's mind this hour.
Absolutely.
Utter shambles, isn't it? Imagine if... Thank you very much, Christopher Hope. Imagine if... would they have been so vocal if people like GB News would have found this out and had not reported this? I wonder whether, because of all these other releases of other people who've gone in the wrong direction or been released by accident, we never really got to hear about it. And this such high-profile individual being released by accident has opened a can of worms. And now we can see clearly that this isn't just an isolated incident.
Yeah, it does make you wonder how many accidental releases are there every day across this country.
And what they've done as well. I mean, he sexual assault, but what about other criminals?
Well, one man who might know is Mark White, our Home and Security Editor. Mark, just initially your reaction to the government saying that Kebatu will now be deported within days. They use the word imminently. Is this likely to take place?
I think there's no doubt it will take place very soon, because you had Hadush Kebatu, when I was actually in Chelmsford Magistrates Court for his sentencing, his lawyer said he wanted to go back to Ethiopia. He was fed up with the whole situation. He didn't realise, apparently, that our laws were so strict that they didn't allow for the sexual assault of those under the age of 18. But there you go. That was part of his supposed mitigation against his sentence, but he said he would willingly go back to Ethiopia. So apparently there's no roadblock in terms of any legal appeals against it. They just need to get the flights up and running and for the officials in Addis Ababa to accept him. So assuming that is all going to go ahead fairly smoothly, then the next day or two he's likely to be on that flight and out of here. Interestingly, the government's saying that they're not going to provide a running commentary on this. You know, when it suits them, any other time they're more than happy to give us a running commentary on all manner of things. But this particular issue, which means so much to people right across the country who are very concerned about the accidental release of this individual and the fact he was clearly at large for 2 days before then being recaptured. That is an issue that many people are very concerned about. They would like a running commentary. We don't even know at this stage whether he has been transferred back from police custody to prison service custody or whether he's gone directly to an immigration removal centre. It's a kind of detail that's kind of useful at this stage.
Yeah.
This is, I suppose, one of the most difficult things for the government to contend with, because ultimately the government will always claim that this is a system that was set up by the previous government, that contracts were signed under the previous government, that they're dealing with the mess of the previous government. And yet this government has been in office for more than a year. They said that they were fixing the foundations, that they were going to smash the gangs, that they were going to sort from root and branch every level of this, and yet we just seem to be lurching from crisis to crisis, whether it's the number of people coming across in small boats, or indeed when they're here, what they do, how they're put up, and whether or not they're accidentally released from prison. I mean, at what point does the government actually take some responsibility, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, there's only so long you can, in office, continue to blame the previous government. There comes a time when you have to accept you're in office now, you've been in office long enough, you've got to grip the various crises. In terms of the prison service, look, we know that there has been big issues in terms of prison overcrowding, a lack of staff, and that was true under the previous government, and especially in the austerity years when lots of prison officers were laid off in that time. They've been trying to an extent to build back prison officer numbers, but not to where they were before. And of course there are many more people in prison now. And it was this government actually that introduced some changes allowing those prisoners to be released 40% of their sentence having been served, as opposed to 50% of their sentence having been served. That wasn't the previous government, that was this government. That added to the caseload of these prison officers who are already dealing with a massive churn in the prisons in terms of prisoners coming in and out. Anyway, I mean, what are we to make of the fact that 262 people were mistakenly released last year in the year to March? Now, are we to assume that all of these prison officers were incompetent and made gross mistakes, or does it actually point to something more systemic in terms of the absolute mess that these prisons are in at the moment, and the way in which the prison staff there are completely overwhelmed?
We're living in a time of what feels like pretty significant social change, and it makes us question things that we've even taken for granted for decades. And one of those at the moment that people are wondering about is actually money. Is the money in your bank account safe? Should you be investing elsewhere? Are we looking at a potential global crash? What will it mean for your savings? Is there a way that you could be using your money that might be outside of government control even? Well, TallyMoney is potentially one solution. So I'm delighted to say that I'm joined today by the CEO and founder of TallyMoney, Cameron Parry. What is TallyMoney?
Well, at TallyMoney, you basically get gold you can spend. So we give people an individual account in their name, everyday account. They get a sort code, an account number. They use that account just like they would pounds from their bank, but it's milligrams of gold that we brand as Tally.
Okay. Why would you do that, though? What is the benefit to the customer instead of just having a normal pound sterling account?
Gold's performance against the pound is above 11% per annum over the last 25 years on average. But we still need money in our daily lives, and we have savings. We know that it's good common sense and prudent to save up for things, not just living credit. You know, whether it's a holiday or a rainy day, your retirement planning, you need to have money in your life, basically, that you can rely on, that's dependable, that nobody meddles with, that nobody can weaponise against you, which is another element of government control when it's the government currency, which we could talk about another time. And it should be pretty simple and straightforward, and that's what we deliver at Tally. And really, we just want people to feel safe and happy with their money. There was a time when the bigger your bank balance, the more confident you felt. Now it's like, I need to do something with it. I can't leave it there. In Tally, you can.
Okay, brilliant. Cameron Parry from TallyMoney, thank you so much.
Thank you, Bev.
All right, Mark White, thank you very much. Really good to talk to you. If you just tuned in, this is coming up to 18 minutes after 1 o'clock. We're now joined by Paul Collar, who's a Liberal Democrat MP for Wimbledon. Paul, welcome to the programme. Paul, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on this complete shambles that we are witnessing at the moment in terms of
your correspondent said it all. You know, the Labour government inherited a shambles, and I'm afraid they haven't got a grip. They've had 16 months to do so, and they haven't done so.
What would the Liberal Democrats do differently? I mean, forgive me if this is slightly presumptuous, but generally the Liberal Democrats are seen as being perhaps softer on issues of crime, law, order, asylum.
I don't think that's at all true. I think it's a fair question. We need to simply speed up the processing of undocumented migrants. We're calling for Nightingale processing centres, recruiting 4,000 people to actually make these assessments quickly. There's been a failure to do so, and that's costing us vast amounts of money. And you would pay for those Nightingale centres by simply cutting the costs we're paying on asylum hotels, which is estimated to be £15 billion. It's an obscene amount.
In your sort of world, then, if you did that, would the migrants be detained and have to stay within those, or would you allow them to roam freely as this and previous governments are allowing?
The issue is not whether they roam freely or not. The issue is whether or not they're processed quickly. We would want them processed quickly, and those that do not pass the test to be deported quickly. That's what we need. But
it is partly, isn't it? Because this particular migrant, because he was able to roam freely, was then convicted of sexual assault. And the people in Epping were rightly very upset because obviously we don't know who is coming in, and then they're allowed to roam free until their claim is processed. So even if it took 1 week, 3 days or however long, in your world, would these people be detained properly in secure accommodation?
I don't think it's sensible to imprison people fleeing from torture, from warfare, from violence. I don't think it's right as a default position to imprison them. But I think one does need a sensible approach to it, which is swiftly processing them.
Do you accept the criticism, and perhaps this is why we've got into the mess that we've got into, subsequent governments not wanting to process too quickly, because ultimately all of the treaties we're signed up, dating back to the 1951 Convention and onwards, mean that actually most people around the world, if they come from most countries that are economically underdeveloped, that have perhaps less democracy, worse LGBT legislation, little to no women's rights, I mean, that is millions upon millions. It's probably hundreds of millions of people that under the various treaties we're signed up to, if they can simply make it to Britain, would have every right under those treaties to claim asylum and would likely be granted asylum. The concern for previous governments has been that perhaps too many people would be granted asylum if there was quick processing.
Let's think this through. You know, remember, under the Dublin Accords, when we were in the EU, people had to claim asylum in the first port of entry in the EU. That's why this is a post-Brexit problem.
Hang on, Paul. How many people were sent away under the Dublin Accords?
Sorry?
How many people were returned to Europe under the Dublin in the final year of the Dublin Accords?
This is the lie. The point is there was very little incentive to come here then because of the Dublin Accord.
But we had more people arriving under the Dublin Accords than we had leaving.
No. Let me finish. Let me finish, please. The reason why we didn't return many under the Dublin Accords was we didn't need to, because we didn't have such a problem. You must have realised the undocumented migrants problem has arisen since Brexit.
That's not true, Paul. Yes, the small boats problem rose significantly after Brexit, but you and I remember both the huge problems that we had with lorries in the late 2000s, tens of thousands of lorries. But the thing is, they're less visible. You can't count them. They're inside the lorries.
Please look at the figures. Please look at the figures. We weren't talking about tens of thousands of migrants, undocumented migrants. That has come post-Brexit. You cannot duck that point.
But Paul, OK, that's great, but we've had Brexit, all right? So we are where we are. So what would the Liberal Democrats do then in terms of this?
Well, I've said we must process more quickly.
How? Because the Home Office are doing the job.
Via Nightingale processing centres,
but the Home Office
by saving the money on hotels.
Yeah, but the Home Office are in charge of all of that, and they're unfit for purpose. So you'd still have the same Home Office that you'd be dealing with.
My Select Committee report has indeed been very critical of the leadership in the Home Office. I agree with you, but that's where we need to start. We need to actually get a grip, and that requires political leadership. Remember, the Tories with the Rwanda scheme let this fester, and the Labour have not taken control of it. Now, much as I'd like to take responsibility for my Tory and Labour colleagues, I don't think I can.
Just before we let you go, Paul, do you worry that this will be a pull factor? If you're granting tens of thousands of people asylum under your Nightingale asylum scheme, that's granting people asylum who came across illegally by small boat. Wouldn't that just encourage more people to do that?
The Nightingale scheme is to process people. It's not to all grant everyone permission to stay. It's to process them.
But looking at historically, a majority of them will be granted asylum.
And then, anyway, well, listen, we've got to go, Paul. But we will watch to see what you vote for then, whilst you're there, and whether you do sort of go along with the Labour Party or whether you vote for stricter controls. Paul Collar, thank you very much.
He's a Liberal Democrat MP
for Wimbledon. Thank you.
No, interesting stuff. I think a lot of people are seeing just the scale of crisis, and we're seeing lots of different proposals from lots of different parties now. It's interesting.
Realistic, Rwanda would have worked. But listen, the Home Office said the government is furious about the number of illegal migrants in this country and in hotels. This is why we will close every single asylum hotel, saving the taxpayer billions of pounds. We've already taken action closing hotels, slashing asylum costs by nearly £1 billion and exploring the use of military bases and disused properties.